it's Rog'er Spry. Rog'er, very warm welcome here on our conference.
Thank you, Willie. It's always a delight to meet up and speak to you. As always, we've got a lot of things in our history. Many years we've known each other, and yes. It's always a pleasure, and it always will be a pleasure to work with you.
Yeah. But Rog'er, give me, normally I need 1 hour, but you give me 1 minute to introduce you, because I think this is a career as a conditioning coach. I must tell to the coaches here on this platform. A conditioning coach who worked in England for Arsenal, Aston Villa, Manchester City, Sheffield Wednesday, Middlesbrough, who worked in Portugal for FC Porto, Sporting Lisbon, Vitória Setúbal, who worked in Greece for AEK Athens and Panathinaikos, who worked in Scotland for Celtic, and who worked for the national teams in Austria, Scotland, and Kuwait. And what I know, he has forgotten Japan. He also worked in Asia. So to work with managers as it is Arsene Wenger, Jose Mourinho, Fernando Santos, Bobby Robson, Ron Atkinson, Alberto Malesani, Marcel Koller, and Andy Roxburgh, I think it's a career you can be really proud on this. And allow me also to say, in our way in Austria to develop this team from, I think, 102 to 15, to number 20 in the world, or number 10 in the world was the best ranking. You took over the whole concept in the conditioning part over 10 years, and it was an amazing work. So I think it's really a great honor to have you here and to give your knowledge to Israeli conditioning coaches. I'm very happy about this, and I want to thank you personally. Please, Rog'er, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Well, thank you very much for the invitation, because it's always fantastic to speak to fellow coaches in lots of different countries with lots of different mentalities, lots of different philosophies. But the one thing that brings us all together is football, and we all have opinions. We all have our own philosophies, but the thing is that I've always been of the opinion that if you have the opportunity to learn from the best, take that opportunity. And I've been very fortunate to work with some unbelievable coaches over the years. A few that Willie didn't mention, like Mario Zagallo and all of these guys, top Brazilian coaches, top Argentinian coaches, and working alongside them in different countries. And it's an adventure. Like Frank said earlier, we never stop learning. The Brazilians have got a wonderful quote, and they say, only 2 people know everything, and one is God and the other one is a liar. And I've always believed that every day is a new opportunity to learn. And as we all know, football over the last 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 years has changed beyond recognition. I was the first and only full-time conditioning coach in British football. There was no such thing. All that happened was one of the coaches would take care of running the guys around the pitch, a few press-ups. There weren't even gymnasiums and things like that in those days. And so I came back from Brazil and working and living in Portugal and working with a lot of Latin mentalities, which was very different from what especially in Northern Europe, what we were used to. The big difference, and it's a major difference, and it still occurs to this day in some countries, is that 90 to 95% of all conditioning in football was and is in some countries still based on athletics. Now, the one big problem of that is that if you use athletic conditioning methodology, that you'll produce athletes. Now, the thing is, football is not athletics. Football is not just about running. It's not just about being strong. It's about 1,000 other things as well. And in Brazil and Portugal and in Argentina and, you know, lots of the Latin countries, their conditioning was never based on those premises. It was always based on dance-like movements. So for argument's sake, in Brazil, instead of trying to, if I have an opportunity to beat my opponent, I don't look for the space behind him to run past him, which we were taught in England. But what I do, if there's no space, I create it myself. Like Messi, like Diego, God rest his soul, and all of these people, they don't run past people. They create a space by throwing a shape at their opposition. And then when their opposition reacts to that shape, they do the opposite. It's very, very simple. It's called counter movement. But it's that simple. It's unbelievably complex. Now, all of those things that the Brazilians, the Argentinians, the South Americans, the Portuguese, etc., 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 they use dance-like movements to create that space. Lionel Messi is probably the ultimate example, where he's got 4 or 5 players around him and he doesn't look for the space where he can run past them. He thinks, well, how can I create the maximum amount of chaos in this area? And he's throwing shapes which causes one person to react, but it's not just causing one person to react. The person who's covering has to react as well. So one movement that Messi does affects 4 or 5 people. Now, if you have players who can do that, it doesn't matter how sophisticated, how organized, how disciplined is the team that you're playing against, it can be broken. Now, that is the thing that they've emphasized in South America for many, many years and Portugal for many, many years. So they produce players, regardless of what position they can play, to be able to beat someone 1v1 or 1v2 or 1v3, or in Messi's case, 1v4, 5, 6, etc. Now, those are the type of players, in my opinion, that are very, very special, but they have a specific need, and that need is they don't need to be able to run fast. They don't need to be able to do how many kilometers they can run in a game. If you look at Messi's statistics over the last 5 years, you'll find he's probably the bottom or in the bottom 3 of how far he runs in a game. But you look to his contribution in the game and how many goals he scored or how many assists. So lots of the parameters that people conventionally use for measurement of physical attributes aren't necessary. It gives people an indication. But if you can train players who can beat people, if I beat someone, then all of a sudden we've got numerical supremacy because we've got 10 outfield players against 9. If I beat 2 players, that means we've got 10 outfield players against 8. Now, that is what all of these top coaches, Guardiola, all, you know, the great Ajax players, the great Ajax team, and all of these teams, Barcelona, Real Madrid, when I was at Porto, all of these players, they can break systems. Okay? So we're going to go through a short but very interesting set of examples, what we use to develop these type of players. The big thing is that, for example, Brazilian football, most of their conditioning is based on a martial art. And it's a martial art which is very, very flamboyant, very, very expressive, but also incredibly powerful and unbelievably unpredictable. You cannot read what these guys are going to do. You've got no idea what Neymar is going to do, or Pele was going to do, or Ronaldo. I had the fortune to work with Ronaldo, not Cristiano, the phenomena. I worked with Ronaldo for a while. So all of these players have got that unpredictability, which is a product of the Brazilian way of training, which is called capoeira. Capoeira is a martial art which was taken from Africa by the Portuguese to Brazil. Now, the influence on capoeira is immeasurable. Honestly, I can watch a Brazilian team play, or players like, you know, David Silva or Bernardo Silva and all of these type of players, and I can pick out individual movements that they are doing which are from capoeira. Because, like I said earlier, it's all about the ability to create space, not to run into space. So I'll just go through a few slides just to give you an example. Now, this is one of my very, very close friends who we worked together. Mourinho, believe it or not, when he first started, was one of my assistants when I worked with a very famous English coach called Malcolm Allison, a team called Vitória Setúbal in Portugal. Now, his father was one of the goalkeeping coaches, and Jose at the time was at university, and he used to come every day before he went to university to take notes and to video everything that we did. And then I said to his father, why doesn't he come and join in with us? And I can teach, rather than him video, and I can explain to him what I'm doing, why I'm doing it, what's the next progression, etc., etc. So we became very, very, very close, and we worked together for 3 or 4 years. And then I left and went back to England. And then 2 years later, I went back to Portugal to Sporting Lisbon. Now, at that time, Bobby Robson was the head coach and Mourinho was working with his assistant. So we started working together again. So we worked together for like 5, 6, 7 years. And over the years, we've always kept very, very close in contact. We have some very, very strong disagreements about lots of things, but we always try and help each other to develop. And, you know, so this is one of Mourinho's famous quotes. He says, all coaches understand football, but very few of them understand about football training. Now, the problem is with a lot of coaches, and I'm generalizing now, I know there's the exception to the rule, most coaches are ex-footballers. And especially if they've been successful footballers, what they do is try and transpose the training they did when they were a top player to what they do today. Now, things change very, very quickly. You know, some of the things that I was, you know, there was no such thing as computer analysis. There was no such thing as heart rate monitors. There was no such thing as drones. And all of these things that we take for granted today, 99.9% of my work, Bobby Robson's work, Mourinho's work, was observational analysis. So we would watch and, you know, analyze separate movements. So, for example, Bobby would say to me, we were playing a game perhaps against Real Madrid in the Champions League. He says, right, today, Roger, I don't want you to watch the game. I want you to watch Luis Figo. Just Luis Figo, with the ball, without the ball, in transition. And I want you to tell me how many touches he has, how many passes he makes, the average length of the passes he makes, how many times he does an unenforced error. Now, all of those things, which we were doing 35 years ago, are the same as today. But the only difference is, now we can do it much quicker, much more accurate with technology, but the principles are the same. So lots of what people think is modern isn't, because football and every other learning aspect it's not linear. People think the progress is modular. So you learn that, and then you learn that, and then you learn that. It doesn't work like that. Football is circular. And I always teach people when I lecture, especially young coaches, don't underestimate the things that you learned when you were a beginner. Because go back to the absolute beginning when you first started studying and look at them now with your eyes that you've got now, which is another 15 years of experience, and look, the things that you thought you understood, now you'll look and you'll understand it in a totally different way. And so a lot of the modern, so-called modern trends in football aren't. You know, for example, a lot of the stuff that Klopp does and Guardiola does and, you know, and Mourinho does, a guy like Malcolm Allison was doing that in 1968 with Manchester City, and it was just 30 years ahead of its time. So when people say, oh, that's revolutionary what those guys are doing, it isn't revolutionary, it's evolutionary. It's evolved, but it hasn't evolved. The only way it's evolved is because of the way of measuring it. But the principles, football is a very simple game. When we have the ball, they have the ball, no one has the ball. And all the rest is up to our interpretation. As I say in Portuguese, the rest is fantasia, it's fantasy. And so the modern trends which everyone talks about now is what we call functional integrated training. There's another word for it in Brazil, they call it global training. Mourinho, because he came through the Portuguese school, you know, a guy called Victor Frade, who I work with at Porto, who has coined the phrase tactical periodization. All of these things are just the same, but with different names. Excuse me, I'm just trying to get my slide to go forward. So the computer's froze, sorry. If you just give me 1 minute, I'll switch the computer off and get it back on again. Oh, well, there we go. Right. Right. All of the things that we've said earlier. Okay. Every team, regardless of age, sex, or standard, must have these philosophies. First one is a group of principles which create organisation in the team. And so that organisation doesn't belong to the coach, it belongs to the team. And so, for example, when I went to Porto, the president sat me down and asked me 3 questions. He said, we know about your qualities, we know about your reputation, and we know how good you are at your job. But we have a philosophy that we need to adhere to. Now, I want to know if you agree. And he asked me these 3 questions, and I did, and that was it. And it's the same at Ajax, the Ajax philosophy, the Barcelona philosophy. If you have no philosophy at the club, how can you organise the first team, the second team, the academy, the youth, all the way down? You have to have a philosophy. But that is a group of principles that creates organisation, very simply. And then it's split into different areas, with the ball, without the ball, in transition. Now, this is a model of play. It's not a system. We're not talking about everybody in the club plays 4-3-3 or 3-4-3 or 3-5-2. That is a system, okay? So it's playing up again. I do apologise for this. There we go. Right. Now, the other thing as part of everyday training is decision-making. Decision-making is a fundamental process like running, jumping, kicking, technique and everything. The daily work, everything that you do physically, technically and tactically is integrated. You cannot just do technical training. You cannot just do physical training, and you can't just do tactical training, because every one of those things is part of something else. And so you get a lot of physical training, for example, which is, it looks fantastic. And I've watched coaches do all these wonderful drills, these wonderful exercises. And you say, can I ask you a very simple question? Does that happen in a game? And they say, I say, well, it doesn't. So why are you doing everything that you do in physical, technical and tactical training must have a transfer to the game. If it doesn't, what you're doing is literally wasting time, because that is the one thing that none of us have got enough of. Okay, so that's crucial, that the decision-making is part of the process. So in other words, we give the players a problem and ask them to solve it. I see so many coaches, they solve all the problems for the players. They say, okay, when he gets the ball, I want you to run there. Or when he gets the ball, I want you to cover here. You've got to give the players permission in training. That's what training's for, is to make mistakes. If they never make a mistake, they never learn. There's an old saying that you learn more from one mistake than 1,000 victories. And so you must understand that football is a game of trial and error. If we don't make mistakes, we don't learn. There is no player in the world, no team in the world, Barcelona at the best, Ajax at the best, Porto at the best, Brazil at the best, who didn't make mistakes, individually and collectively. So every training session that you do, there must be a decision, for example. So you don't just have players running for running's sake. You don't just have players with the ball, juggling with the ball, because that is not, one, game specific, and two, it's got no relevance whatsoever in the game. Because all of those things that you do in what we call isolation, you're running in isolation. You're doing techniques in isolation. Now, on a football pitch, you've got an opponent or 2 opponents or 3 or 4 or 5 opponents in close proximity. So all of the things that people are taught, doing all these wonderful ball skills or tricks or whatever you want to call them, And they assume then that when they go on the pitch, they'll be able to do that. And they won't, because you won't be allowed to, because someone will hit you, someone will close you down, someone will deny you space. So if you do all of these things in isolation, without the integration of a technique, a physical threat, the threat of making a mistake, all of those things have to be put into training. If they're not, what you're doing, it's what we call your training for perfect football, which doesn't exist. So if you train with no opposition, you train with no threat, you train with no pressure, you're not going to build a player that's game specific. And so all of these things, it's much easier to gain reaction speed than it is to gain pure speed. Now, I studied at university and I've got sports science degrees, and I understand the mechanics of athletics, and I understand, to run faster, about stride length, about knee action, knee lift, about arm cadence, all of these things. But unfortunately, you cannot apply those principles to football, because one, you've got a little round thing at your feet that you're trying to control while you're doing all things. Two, you've got 3, 4, or a group of players opposing you who are trying to stop you doing those things. So all of the things that you think, 40-meter sprints without the ball or without opposition, fantastic. But what for? You're not going to get the ability to open your legs out, correct stride length, high knee lift, arm cadence, all of those things which I said earlier are athletics based, which have no transfer to football. Okay, so but it's much quicker and much easier to teach someone how to react faster. So you give them drills where they've got to make not just one decision, but maybe 2 decisions very, very quickly in a very short period of time. So then you use the overload principle. So in other words, one guy's got the ball, you have 3 guys close him down from all different angles and say, okay, now what are you going to do? Now that guy then is creating time and space by his creativity and by his reaction to, it's what we call his reacting to spatial awareness. So he can react because he can see, you see the reaction of Messi. He creates time and space out of seemingly nothing, because he can see things which 99.9% of players can't see, because his ability to react to certain situations, and not just react to them, but react to them in the correct way. This computer's been working perfect all day. It's crazy, isn't it? Just hang on one sec. Okay. Can everyone see that screen now? Okay.
You can see. We can see. Continue.
Okay. Right. The most important thing is from a conditioning point of view. Now, conditioning is not just physical. This is why I'm not a fitness coach. A fitness coach is a completely different thing to a conditioning coach. A conditioning coach works with the mind and the body. So, because you can't separate them. What we try and do is get a thought and an action closer and closer together. That's what reaction time is. And so to get that balance between thinking and acting is absolutely crucial. So that word that we've just used, the balance between mind and body, but the balance when you train between the work and your recovery. The number of players who get injured because the coach trains very, very intensely all week, but doesn't put the same amount of intensity into the recuperation. The recuperation is crucial. It's part of the game. And the game is about getting prepared. And once you've finished that game, getting prepared as quickly as possible for the next game, because it's an unfortunate occurrence that the higher level that you play at, the more games you play. I mean, for example, when we were at Porto, we were playing Sunday, Wednesday, because we were in the Champions League. And then out of the 28 players in the squad, 26 of them were full internationals. So every time they played a national game, all of our players were away. So they had very, very little rest. So you can't just do high intensity training every day. You have to get a balance between work and rest, and using multi-methods of regeneration, ice cryotherapy, ice baths, massage, sleep, which is the most important one, and obviously nutrition. But all of those things have an importance. Okay, now let's go into the next stage. Now, what's the best teacher? Is it a game? The game is the best teacher, because everything that you do must be game related. Like I said to you earlier, I've seen so many coaches, they do fantastic exercises, they do fantastic training routines, and you watch them and you say, it's got nothing to do with football. And what happens that you train one way and play another way. So when you train, it must be game and football specific. Everything that you do in the game, you apply the overload principle. So if you do a certain amount of movements in a game, then all of a sudden in training, you do the very, very similar amount of movements, but overloaded. So instead of, say, if you do it 15 times in a game, in training, you might do it 50 times. Very, very simple rules, but those are the things that you must apply. Now, once you understand that, some of the things that people measure, especially with, technology is fantastic, and I'm a great advocate of technology, but don't use technology for technology's sake. Without being disrespectful, I've worked with some coaches, and the things they measure, you think, what in God's name has that got to do with improving people's performance? Because that's all we want data for. What did we do wrong? How can we remedy it? Simple. Now, if you've got I work with one coach who I shan't mention, who every week he'd have a pile of papers like this on his desk with all the data. And you look and you think, what's all that data for? And you've got to have data which is usable. Okay, so you use something which is specific, which can be measured, which can be observed, can be monitored, and you must be able to control it. And that control, a lot of it, even with modern technology, it's a feeling. This is a part of football that the Brazilians and the South Americans especially are very into, the spiritual side of football. And what we mean by the spiritual side, and we're not talking about religion, or we're not talking about anything like that, we're talking about the emotional feelings, the emotional part of football. Now, people say, well, what do you mean? I say, well, you telling me if you play against Real Madrid on Saturday and you win 3-0 in their stadium, and then you've got a game in the week, or you play against the bottom of the league in Portugal at home and you lose 2-0, do you think the players are going to be in the same frame of mind when they play the next game? Of course they're not. We're all emotional, we're all human. But to understand that, now a lot of coaches misunderstand emotions for bad attitude. Oh, he's lazy. No, he's not. He's probably more emotional and he's more upset than most people because of what's happened. And he's probably analysing his own game and his partner's game. So don't confuse attitude to emotion. What you've got to do is everyone has a different emotional intelligence. Some people are very emotional, some people are not emotional at all. And everyone doesn't react to the same stimulus. So if you've got one stimulus that you think will apply to everyone, I've seen coaches doing it. Come on, you can do this. Now, if you do that in Brazil, everyone in Brazil will think you're insane. Because think about it logically. What does that give the impression of? It's tightness. So I'm going, come on. So I'm tightening up. Now, if you get your players to do that and tighten up, they're going to play worse because they can't, you know, their muscles aren't relaxed enough to explode, you know, to load the muscle to explode and all of these things. Now, in Brazil, if they want you to try, how do they do this? Shake the water off your hands. Relax. Calm down. Now, the problem is that if you assume that everyone has the same motivational level, that you'll have bad problems. I mean, for example, I was a European kickboxing champion, and I used to react to being told that I wasn't very good. So if someone said to me, "Oh, fantastic, Roger, you look fantastic. Go on. You know, today you're going to do this, that, and the other," and I just shut off. But if someone said to me, "Be careful today, Roger, because you haven't looked very good in the last 3 or 4 days in training," and I used to say, "I'll show you how good I am." But if you try and motivate everyone with that same pathway, that you're not going to get through to people. And what will happen, you'll start fragmenting the group, because your assumption is by screaming and shouting, or even worse, now this is for me the biggest crime that any coach can do, but especially a conditioning or a fitness coach, is to use exercise as a punishment. Okay, they're doing shooting practice. Okay, you've missed that. Okay, sprint and get the ball, come back and give me 20 press-ups. What does that teach a player? So the next time he approaches the ball, he's tight because he's frightened of making a mistake. He's frightened of making a mistake, so he doesn't perform. So he makes another mistake, and the coach goes, "Right, sprint again, this time 30 press-ups." Now, the assumption is that, oh, yeah, it's good, it's making him, you know, making him strong mentally. No, it's not. It's destroying him mentally, because what you're doing, you're building in a fear factor which shouldn't be there. So all of those things have to be part of the training. Okay, now we'll go into functional integrated training. Now, the one thing that I introduced in Portugal, working with a guy called Carlos Queiroz, who was a very famous coach worldwide. He was at Manchester United. He was a head coach of Real Madrid. I mean, he's been the head coach of 5, 6, 7 national teams, and he's probably one of the best coaches in history. Now, it was him. When you see all the top Portuguese coaches now and all the top Portuguese players for the last 30 years, you know, the Fernando Santoses and your Mourinhos and your Bernard, and all of these guys, it's all because of him, because he was the guy who started the curriculum of development. Now, he, alongside the University of Physical Education in Lisbon, were the first university in the world where you could do a degree, a master's degree and a PhD, not on sports science, but on football science. The first one in the world. And then, so the product of that now is, you see, for such a small country, the quality that these, you know, that have been developed, coaches and players over the last 20, 30 years, is just phenomenal. And it's because Carlos implemented all that. Now, when I worked with him at Sporting, he'd never thought, or never seen anyone at that time, this is in late 80s, he'd never seen anyone do individual training. So everyone had trained together and they do all these things. And I said to him, I want to work with Luis Figo and I work with Paulo Sousa, or I want to work with Balakov on their own because they need this, 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 and this. Now, after a couple of years, that became standard. And when I first worked with Willie in Austria, that's what we implemented. Doesn't matter how good the player is, he's still got weaknesses. And that weakness is something that he can't work on when I'm working with him at the national team because we haven't got the time. He needs a program in conjunction with his club, because obviously we liaise with their club, that he can do to build up his weaknesses. And so that individual program became part of the Austrian way of player development, coaching development. And so that is something that's another aspect that every player that you'll work with, and I don't care if it's Messi or it's whoever it is, they've got a weakness. And this might be a really arrogant thing to say. People think it's arrogance, but it's just a fact. There is no player in the world that I couldn't improve or you couldn't improve, because every player has a slight weakness. Okay. Thank you very much. I do apologize once again for the blips in the computer. It's always the way, but thank you very much.
No problem, Roger. It was a Pleasure to hear you. And I think I speak for all conditioning coaches here of Israel. It's more than to speak about speed, endurance, or power. It's a philosophy, and I think you did it very well. And I hope that we are in touch, and you can also help here in Israel, perhaps in the pro license, or to come here and to share with our conditioning coaches your worldwide experience.
That would be
I
a
hope
pleasure.
we see us again soon. The last time was in the St. George's Park, and also next year we're coming together and see you again.